but I love going out into the crowd. And this one time I rookie mistake. It was like one of my first tours, and I forgot my forgot to check my microphone, and so my wireless and the batteries were dead, and so stagehand was awesome. He's like, "Here you go, boop," and he knew to give me like a 50-footer cable, and I went so far out, and it got unplugged, and I'm still just like singing and screaming, and I felt like in my head, just be like people knew what I was doing, so they could still hear me, even though they definitely couldn't.
That's what I'm talking about. That's what I'm talking about. You know what I'm talking about. That's what I'm talking about.
Hey, it's Larry Flake. Welcome to a new edition of Let's Talk Music, the show powered by VERO, and for good reason, because Let's Talk Music is the real life, real time version of what you get when you join us on VERO Music. This is all about passion for songs, for artists, for shows, all things music. And I've got such a great lineup for you today. Of course, my co-pilot is Pete Winfield of the band Until the Ribbon Breaks, but I'm very excited for you to meet two really good pals of mine. Lauren Ruth Ward is a singer, songwriter, and performer based in Los Angeles. You know, she has been likened to Janis Joplin, to Alanis Morissette, to so many of the great women of rock and roll. And she carries the influence of these great women, but she's a true original, and you're going to see that. Plus, one of my oldest friends and mentors is joining us today, Steve Anderson. Now, if you are of the 90s club generation, you know Steve as one half of the remix team Brothers in Rhythm, who remixed big #1 hits by everyone from Michael Jackson onward. He has since become one of the top producers in pop music and one of the leading music directors of concerts around the world. He is the go-to for all things Kylie Minogue. He's worked with Celine Dion, Westlife, Steps. He is a great tastemaker of music, and he knows how to mount the biggest tours, things that you can't even imagine happening on stage. And so it's appropriate that we have Steve, because today's topic, all the world's a stage. We're going to talk about all things touring, and we're going to begin with our question that Pete is going to offer. Go ahead, Pete.
So the first question, starting with an easy one, is what is your favorite show you've attended as a fan, which, you know, in my experience doesn't always mean best. So favorite specifically. Lauren.
That's so hard because I am quite the show goer. Yeah, different reasons, right? More recently, I got to see Tamino at the, who's like an Egyptian Belgium musician. And I got to see him at the Masonic Lounge, which is inside the Hollywood Forever Cemetery. That's like, you're familiar with Los Angeles. Yeah, that was on March 14th and then 2020. So on the 15th, the world like closed down. So it's like, his music is already so like sexy and eerie, but it was like already like, we were like, are we all gonna die from being here? But it was incredible. He's just like, he deserved, I mean, I'm a huge Buckley fan, but you know, I don't use the word lightly, but he's a Buckley reincarnate and then some. It was just him and his guitar. It was amazing. But then also like The Used at HF Festival, like 2003 was my first time crowd surfing, got my nipple pierced, you know, just like crazy 15-year-old bullshit.
Whilst crowd surfing?
No, moving target. Yeah, and then just like, you know, kind of cliche rock and roll shit, like Florence and the Machine at Hollywood Bowl 2015, like just watching her. It's so interesting. I like, obviously, like I knew, like, you know, Dog Days and everything had just kind of it was, you know, you were smacked in the face with those delicious ear goodies. You couldn't escape it. But I didn't know. I never bought lungs, or I was just such a late bloomer when it came to Florence. And I had a couple friends that had seen me perform when I moved out here, and they were like, "You remind me of Florence, just like the way you move all over the place." And I was like, "Oh, she moves. That's cool." I laughed at myself because I was like, "How did I not know how incredible of a performer she is?" But yeah, that was really kind of imperative to like my coming into my own as a maniacal lunatic on stage.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Amazing.
I
Okay.
could go on, but I won't.
Yeah. Okay, over to you.
I think it's an interesting question because I think when you design shows, there's a point where you kind of know how the cookie is made. So I think, you know, some of my favorite shows were probably when I was a lot younger, before I got to know how they were all put together, because there was still a mystique and a magic there. So for that, I would have to say the Love Sexy tour by Prince was one of my absolute favorites, because I was still very young. I just was caught up in the whole thing, and just the musicianship, him as a ridiculous superstar, just so incredible. So that would be one. And then as a sort of a bigger show, when I was starting to do shows myself or put together shows, the Madonna Confessions tour was extraordinary as a piece of work, as a piece of art. I was not old enough or around enough to be able to go and see the classic Madonna shows like the Girly Show and stuff like that. And then my third one, I know you said one, but Lauren had three, so I'm going to nick that as well. was a completely different one, which was a very intimate outdoor show. Well, intimate. It was outdoors. There was quite a few people there, but it was Bon Iver in Melbourne, and it was an outdoor show. And actually, just watching all of the people on stage, and they were just wandering around. I don't know if anyone's seen Bon Iver live, but they just pick up instruments, little bits of everything. Everyone can play everything. It's like a family. It's like watching a family on stage, just creating. It's like all the microphones are just open, and you just hear that it's so organic and so beautiful. So those would be three of mine.
Those are really good, really, really good. Okay, Pete, let's have your favorite gig as a punter, as a fan.
Both of those answers reminded me of the same two shows. Florence, exactly the same experience of you. There's songs I loved kind of in the ether, but I was never like, until I saw her perform. And she was the best front person I've seen performing still since seeing her. You know, she was everywhere all at once, all over the stage, up the rafters. It reminded me I've seen like early videos of like Eddie Vedder at the beginning of Pearl Jam. It reminded me of that kind of spirit where it's completely free. So yeah, you just reminded me of that. It was amazing. And then I've seen Bon Iver, and it was so moving. It was incredible. I have to say, the one that I would say changed my life, I suppose, was I went to see in Cardiff when I was young, Radiohead, and it was on the Benz tour, but it wasn't radio. Like, I'd gone to see Radiohead, but they had this support act, and they were like, at the time no one had heard of him, and it was this guy DJ Shadow, and it was the combination of his visuals and how organic it was for electronic music, and that it was supporting Radiohead. At the time it was the Bends, so they weren't dabbling in electronica at this point, and I, up until that point, I come from songs, and my folks are musicians, and it was all very song heavy. And so to me at that point, I thought electronic music was dance music. And then I heard that and was like, wait, it can be anything you want it to be. and then I became obsessed with the whole genre. That DJ Shadow led me to Portishead, which led me to Massive Attack, and so it started this whole journey, which is where I've ended up. So that show sticks out as one that genuinely changed the trajectory of my life, let alone career. So yeah, that would be my answer.
So when I listen to all of you talk, it makes me think about where I'd like to begin this conversation, because my favorite gig as a fan goes all the way back to long before I was in the business, because as you mentioned, Steve, it's a bit different when you know how the sausage is made, right? Or how the cookie is baked, because I don't like going to gigs now, because I'll go and I'll think of all the elements that the normal fan wouldn't see. So I think about like when I was 15 and had the honor of sitting, or just standing at the very front of CBGB's in New York City and watching Patti Smith recite poetry and spit and throw and crack a bottle over her head, and just thinking, this is what performance should be. It should be completely free of the lines that shows have to have now out of necessity. What I needed from that night was her giving me truth through her music and through her performance. And so it makes me wonder, what do you feel you need to put on stage when you're putting a show together? What do you want to happen during the hour, 2 hours that you are either on stage or that you are putting a show together for an artist? So like, for example, Steve, when you work with Kylie, you've done, how many tours have you done with Kylie Minogue at this point?
Excellent question. Probably 10, maybe more. Don't know.
So what is obviously the goal is for her to look good, to sound good, but like when you sit and talk with her about the show, what has to happen in order for it to be a successful show?
I think with specifically with Kylie, obviously the main thing is it's a Kylie show. It's people coming to see her, but a lot of the times that I work with her, it's very often around the show is around the cycle of an album. So it will be reflective of that record, or the current record that's out at the time. So for instance, we did the last tour that she did was called Golden. That album was called Golden. It had a very organic sound to it. So it was about taking highlighting the best songs from that album, but also taking some of her older material and reworking it to fit within the world. And in general, it all comes from the top with her, obviously. But from a creative team point of view, it's very much about the audience, giving them a bit of a journey. A lot of the shows that I work on are arena shows, and they have many aspects to them. So there's video, there's choreography, there's lighting, there's sets, there's all that sort of stuff. So it really is about pacing a show so that everyone gets what they want, but at the same point, it makes it different from what you've done before. And we have a phrase which probably sounds a bit pretentious, but we call it the arc of the show, whereby you don't just play songs, but it has a journey. It goes through things. You're always going to end up at one particular place, but there's something you can do in, say, song 5 that sets up song 12. It's a bit like a game of chess, really, that you don't really know. So for instance, with that last tour, the Golden Tour, there was an entire written narrative that nobody ever saw, nobody ever knew, but everybody knew about that was working on it, which was a whole, like a movie, really. So it was done like that, so everybody was in a storyline.
Wow.
So yeah, specifically from the shows that I'm involved with, which are predominantly, I've done smaller shows, but predominantly a lot of the shows I do are bigger arena shows. It's about giving the audience is king and giving them a really, really amazing experience. But it's frankly all about them.
So, Lauren, when I've been maniacally clicking around and looking at bootleg clips of you on stage, and you know, like your fans really love your shows. It becomes a very visceral, emotional experience, and so much of it feels in the moment. So, how much do you plan before you step out there? And so as a result, how can you and do you go with an arc? Is that even part of your vocabulary when you're putting a show together?
Great question. If I'm understanding Steve's definition of an arc, I mean, yeah, there's a bit of planning in there when it comes to like bringing up a special guest to do like a cover. I kind of see the arc. I kind of see the premeditated part as like I have like thrashy bangers, and then I have like these estrogen pumped introspective, just me and my guitar. So I like to kind of create a mood, whether I'm like opening up with like 5 solo songs and then we're just gonna bang it out, and then kind of bring everybody back in for the encore. And that's my quite literal arc. But kind of your part one, not much of it is planned. And I completely agree with both of you. You are there for the audience and it is about them. And so I sometimes have like a B plan. As far as my performance, that part is not planned. I go into, I don't know where she goes, but I'm a vessel. I feel like I'm no longer here. I seldom even have like inner dialogues unless like someone is doing something and you know that sensor kind of goes off of like, is everyone safe? But just because of the day and age we live in. But yeah, the most planning I do is I make a plan because I'm not very conscious when I'm in it to make sure that the crowd is taken care of. So like I'll kind of have like a conversation with the band and I'll say like, hey, if everybody's like feeling really high energy, let's not do pull string. Let's just go right to Blue Collar Sex Kitten, or let's not do Burden. Let's just stick with Valhalla, Wise Gal, and let's just like do bangers. Like I just kind of want to give them what they want.
So let me go a little bit further with you, Lauren. So how flexible do you feel when the audience gets as physically involved as they sometimes do? Because they go there, they go for it.
Mm-hmm.
They clearly feel allowed by you to do that. But so how does that affect you? I mean,
you can't have one without the other. From the first note, I mean, I feel like I'm saying, we're having an emotional conversation the entire time. I say the first thing, but then they're the B, and then we just go back and forth, and I know exactly what I need to do based off their reaction, based off how they're taking in my whatever the hell it is I'm giving them. It's a conversation of emotions the entire time. I can feel their energy. It's feeding back. It's just like a figure eight is how it feels. This sounds really hippy dippy, and I do not do drugs when I'm on stage. I'm very sober because it's a drug in itself, and it's the best drug. But I swear, like there has been moments where I've seen like the aura, like the figure eight light.
It's so
everybody unfollows me after that.
No, it's so interesting because you know, Steve, I have to come right back to you for a second before we talk to Pete, and say, having been to many of the shows that you've helped sculpt, there is room for spontaneity, but what happens if, you know, Kylie, for example, let's just stay with her because why not, gets really involved, and how much flexibility does she allow, or do you allow?
It would depend on the show. There's usually a couple of moments that tend to kind of creep in once the show's been out for a while where something will happen. But the other thing to remember about those kind of production shows, which is kind of a lot of what I do, is there's a lot of moving parts. And a lot of it is, again, very, very different to what Lauren was talking about. A lot of the big shows that I work on are, they run on, everything runs on a time code. So, you've got lasers, lights, videos. I mean, water. We even had, fountains. Everything is triggered. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, we did a whole
Wow.
water show, and so everything
So
is
cool.
there was like 20 fountains on stage and like a pool and everything, and it was the guys from the Bellagio that programmed it. So that you cannot change because everything is completely, the performance can obviously be rechanged, and she is very much like Lauren, will react to what is coming back from an audience point of view and really love it. But we do have a bit of a sort of a mantra really, which is once the show is set, really the only thing that should change is kind of the audience, because you want everyone to get that same experience. However, there's a live band on stage, so anything can and will happen. And usually about show 11 or 12, there'll be a shout from the audience of a song, and then there'll be this a cappella moment or leap into something that isn't in the show, because naturally it happens. But predominantly on the big production shows, there isn't a lot of room to really do that, just on the basis of the fact that every single song has had 10 levels of various things put around it to be able to work in a certain way. So we can't like vamp it and extend a song because stuff would run out.
So, but then doesn't there, it sounds then like the dexterity for the artist has to come not from the energy from the audience, as was the case with Ruth, but rather from behind the stage where things go wrong, right?
Well,
Technology goes wrong, and the singer and the artist has to be flexible. If suddenly the fountain doesn't work, or
that can happen. And she's the one, for me, the best performer I've ever worked with. So I mean, she can always deal with any of those situations that go on. But I do think there is a difference in what an audience energy can give. And the other thing is that we preempt the audience moment, so we try and put them in. So if you've seen the shows that I work on, we will naturally extend moments. We will put in crowd moments. We will add in those things. And you won't see that no two performances are the same as far as the artist is concerned, but as far as what surrounds them is concerned, it is pretty much the same, because it's been worked on meticulously for so long to get it to a point where everybody's happy. And the first two shows, by the way, that's our testing ground. We can change things, but once it's set and we know it works, it kind of goes out the same every night.
So it's interesting, Pete, because what I'm hearing is that that's where these two opposite ends meet, right? You could have a really gritty, gritty show, or you could have a big production, and it's the added band member, if you will, of the audience that really sets the tone. So what has your experience been, though, with audiences? Because you have a very different kind of music, right? Your music is electronic, and it's very layered.
It was really, I mean, first of all, it's really inspiring hearing your answer, Lauren, because I feel like that's a relationship I always long to have at a live show, and I never quite felt present enough. And that's a whole nother story of a complicated relationship I had with doing live shows or being a front person in general. But in terms of the electronic thing, the whole point of the live show, which we wanted to convey, was that it isn't just electronic music. So we would swap out, we would do some of that, but then I would play the trumpet and the piano and bits of guitar, because we wanted it to be song first. I never, for me, I don't think live shows, one emotion I'm never looking for with a live show is to be impressed. I want to be moved, but I don't want to. I feel like being impressed takes me out of that relationship that you were talking about with the artist. So we wanted to convey a more human version of the song, I guess, without all the bells and whistles. But it was really difficult because then, like you said, you do try and marry. We wanted to do justice to the production that was on the record, but also incorporate these organic elements. And it's hard because, like you said, Steve, we were trying to do that within the framework of running certain things that were syncing, like visuals and lights and stuff. But then obviously, when you're trying to incorporate something more organic in that, things can go off time, you know? So it was a real we never figured it out, in the sense, it always felt to me like you had to do either or. I never quite figured out how to have that spontaneity, and that this is about my relationship with the people who've come to the show, and trying to present something that you've meticulously dialed in. And I think both things are really valid, and I love both kinds of shows. But I didn't figure out. We tried to how to do both at the same time.
How to be digitally analog.
Yeah, exactly. How to have the fountains going whilst having
a jam set.
yeah, exactly.
I mean, it's the ultimate dream, though, isn't it? To have the passion, the emotion, but also have something that is a visual equivalent to what your music is. You know, so Steve, when you meet with an artist and they know that you know how to put together these big productions, how often are they completely barmy about what they want versus what you can give them?
I don't ever describe it as balmy. I love craziness. I mean, I just said we did a water show. I mean, like, that to many people would be insane, and we toured it as well, by the way. So no, I don't think there are any crazy ideas. I think also, and interestingly, you know, just picking up on what Pete said and what Lauren said, you know, we even if we do a big production show, the emotion is the number one priority. So, you know, when I went on about the arc of the show, it can sometimes sound a bit cold and a bit clinical, but actually it's making sure that you don't have that thing where you're just it's just flashing for no apparent reason. So the emotion and the heart of it is actually the most important thing. But no, I don't think there are any crazy ideas. I mean, I've worked with lots of people, and also sometimes there'll be really big ideas, but it won't be an arena show. You know, I worked on a show with Leona Lewis, and it was a theatre show. She'd done an arena show, and she was going into theatre shows. So we couldn't do all of the big things, but there were some simple things that she wanted to do that we were able to do, and we did. I worked with, and again, by the way, I just did work on the music side. There's always incredible creatives that do the visuals, and on that there was a great creative called Emma Ball, and they worked on projections. And had these beautiful projections on screens, and had some amazing moments. Leona learned how to play drums, which she'd never played before, and we had this whole drum moment for Lee, and she was playing piano. And so yeah, I don't think I mean, I don't agree on crazy ideas. I mean, there's usually one person somewhere that says the dreaded word hologram, which, as we know, the only way that ever works is if you're ABBA and you build your own arena, because the hologram only works if you're sat directly in front of it. And that's why ABBA have built their own arena, because that's the only way that works. But outside of that, yeah, I think anything's possible. And no, I don't. No one's ever come up to me and said something that's so crazy that I'd say, don't be so silly. I welcome it. I love that, because
Love that.
even if it's a mad idea and you can't do that, you can do that. Will bring the thought process to something that you would never have thought of before.
Love it.
So Lauren, when you're thinking about building a show, where do you begin in that creative process? When do you start to think, obviously you like the flexibility, you like the kind of the magic that comes from this very intimate bond you have with your audience, but you are a very visual performer. So what happens? I kind of feel, when I've watched you so far in these tapes that I've gathered, which are really fun, a very ambitious performer.
Thank you.
That's how I would describe you, as very ambitious. So tell me about the first plans of a new show.
From inception to the stage, from like when I'm writing a song, sometimes I'll even make a note in my writing journal of like, this would be really cool with like a bit of a small choir or something, which is so important to jot those notes down, because I feel like the best ideas come when a song is this newborn baby that you are like just labored over, and you're so inspired. And then also like in the studio, and in the studio, I think of things as I'm deciding. I don't know. I like was raised on R&B and disco and screamo, and so like, am I gonna be aggressive with this take, or I can do runs? I'm like, I can't. Sometimes I can't decide. So once I decide how I'm gonna deliver a line, how much breath do I need? So I'll be like, okay, for this moment, I'm gonna sit down, and then these choruses where it's more wishy-washy, I can like run all over the place. So I'm going to put like some 4-foot mushrooms right here and here. And I'm going to go over to this mushroom and maybe have a conversation with this mushroom, and then push that mushroom away and then come back to the audience. Like, a usual Wednesday night. I'm just kidding. Yeah. It happens. Yeah. I know what I need to give a good performance. And so I kind of, just take all of the ingredients to make sure I'm not, because I'm so physical, it actually took me a second. And I learned how to keep my breath while basically doing jumping jacks and singing. I learned how to do that while 87 to 500 video cameras are on me. So I've learned through the bloodbath that is YouTube. I'm glad the tapes that you've gathered are making you think I'm like awesome and ambitious. It is really nice to hear, because we are our own tough critics. But I digress. Yeah, it happens throughout the entire time.
So what do you like right before you go on?
I'm so excited, and
Are you?
I'm so excited. Yeah, I'm an Energizer bunny. It doesn't. Even like that 11th or 12th show, when you're just like, Steve was like, I was like, oh, and you're like, something will go wrong. I think it's because we're so programmed and we know what we're doing, that you're, I don't know, something about you gets kind of inadvertently cocky. You just kind of lax for a second, because you get tired. like week 2 is like, okay. And then you hit a stride, I feel. But yeah, I do yoga regardless of who's in the room. I do my vocal warm-ups. If I'm really nervous, if it's like I'm still playing, like all my territories are all over the place, so I still play smaller clubs. Sometimes in my better, my more receptive territories, I'm playing bigger spaces, or I'm opening up for somebody who it's like an arena tour. If I'm getting really nervous to be in front of somebody else's massive crowd, I might have like a little tequila and water. But yeah, I'm just stoked pretty much the whole time. I love touring.
That's awesome. So Pete, how do you get ready to go on?
I don't.
I asked that, and I just
don't.
looked down, and I'm like, this is not going to be pretty.
I don't. I mean, how honest do you want me to be? I mean, it's you, so I will be. But hey, I've only ever done one show sober in my life, and then I got sober, and I haven't done a show since. It's the reality of my answer, which is a lot to do with why touring was incredibly problematic. Live performance was incredibly problematic because I never felt comfortable there in the first place. Singing for me was like I love writing songs. I absolutely love it, and lyrics, and then the production, and then I was kind of reluctantly started singing on them, like, well, no one else is here. And then, you know, one thing leads to another, and before I knew it, I was standing on a stage, like, what? And you know, years and years of that, and but there were moments, don't get me wrong, there was moments in that, and I can remember them photographically almost, where I suddenly was in the room and was present, and then there was people who somehow knew this song I'd written somewhere in the world I'd never been, and so that's why I'm really excited to potentially do it again with a completely different sober clarity of mind. I think it's going to be incredibly nerve-wracking and really powerful because, you know, my using and drinking was all about anxiety and social anxiety. So take someone with social anxiety and then put them on a stage, like, yay for me. But I feel different now, and I feel like I've got somewhat more of a distance and control over those emotions. So I really, as much as it's terrifying, I'm incredibly excited to. And so ultimately, that's a very long way of saying I have no idea. I have no idea what it's going to feel like or what it's going to be like, but it's exciting.
Yeah. So Steve, I feel like we've talked a lot about the technical aspects of what you do, but I know many of the artists who you've worked with, and there's one thing that they all say. I don't know if I've ever told you this, but one thing that they all say is that they never feel safer than when they are with you, even if it's going to be stepping out onto this mega monolithic stage. They never feel safer. That's something that Kylie's told me several times. That's something Leona's told me. That's something that a number of people who have worked with you on big and small shows, that you are very, and so I take that as, you know, how to nurture and, and foster the safety and security that an artist needs in order to go out and do the big show, because it's a very scary thing, right? So what do you like about performers that makes you so good at it?
Because I'm not one, I would not. I mean, if you want to sort of talk about, when Pete's talking about being scared, I mean, I'm a bit of an anomaly in this conversation on the basis of the fact that I put shows together. I do arrangements for shows, I rehearse bands for shows, but I never set foot on that stage. I am not that person. I never wanted to be that person. It would give me conniptions beyond belief to be standing there. I can play the instruments, I can do the whole thing. I do not have the gene of wanting to be a performer. I never have done. Even from when I was a kid, I never wanted to do it. So initially, my thing is I'm absolutely in awe of people that can do it and people that do it incredibly well. So that's my first thing. And then secondarily, it's about really just the safety aspect is more just surrounding. artists with a really incredible group of people, and that group of people is not just the band. That group of people is the crew as well. Massively, it's the crew. It's a safe pair of hands, you know, to catch them if they fall. They need to know they've got it. It's interesting you talking about the pre-show ritual. Nearly all the bands I work with, they go the 10 minutes before on stage, they just go very quiet. There's a real quiet time, and it was interesting actually what you were saying, Lauren, about yoga and stuff. There's one of my favorite shows that I ever was part of was Kylie did Glastonbury a couple of years ago, and there was a moment in the dressing room backstage, and it was probably, you know, the biggest show of her life, and just the band just go very quiet, and it's not very rock and roll, and it's not people having a party or like woo, you know, that it doesn't happen. Everyone just gets centered, and they're really excited, but they just get centered, and all you can really hear is the tippity tappity of my drummer just practicing on his practicing pads. You can just hear that, not really much else. A little bit of vocal warm-ups. So I'm in awe of them. And also I just want to catch something that Lauren said as well, which is about stamina and being able to keep obviously your body, but most importantly your voice in incredible condition. And I think it's important for anyone possibly listening that's maybe starting out. There is nothing more important if you're a singer than making sure you look after your voice. It means that you might not be able to go to the bar until 4 a.m. It means you may have to be on vocal rest. It may mean you have to warm up every single day when you don't want to. But that is the difference between you cancelling a show or not cancelling a show. So these people are athletes. You know, they look on stage, they look like they're having the time of their life, and they absolutely are. And I'm immediately after this, I'm going to go and find the clips of Lauren, because I can't wait to see what you do on stage. But in essence, they are rock stars. And all I try to do is make sure that they have the setup and everything around them so they feel so comfortable to just do what comes very naturally to them.
So we're going to bring this in for a landing, and so I have one last question, and so I want to have some fun with that. The craziest thing you've either experienced, Lauren, or saw on stage during one of your shows. It could be good crazy, it could be bad crazy.
One of my shows?
Yeah.
Okay. Because Bjork did have holographs. That would have been my number 4. You know, she had something. There's a bunch of screens, and so there's
as long as you're sat directly in front of them, they're fine. If you're on the bleachers, you'll miss them. That's the issue.
On my I'm like, what is crazy for?
Well, I mean, it's all relative with your shows.
I always have such professional players. So I feel like I'm the fuck up.
You're the wild card. So what's the wildest thing you've done?
I guess that, you know, it's not super wild, but it's not reinventing the wheel, rather. But I love going out into the crowd. And this one time, a rookie mistake. It was like one of my first tours, and I forgot my forgot to check my microphone, and so my wireless and the batteries were dead. And so stagehand was awesome. He's like, "Here you go, boop," and he knew to give me like a 50-footer cable. And I went so far out, and it got unplugged, and I'm still just like singing and screaming. And I felt like in my head, like people knew what I was doing, so they could still hear me, even though they definitely couldn't. It was a smaller club, like 700, but like I was like, and I'm just like still singing, and like I was like, was I levitating, or was someone holding me? Just like those moments where you just get kind of lost. But yeah, and the mic, I don't even know where the microphone was. the bouncers are like this bitch. But yeah, doing that and then making my way back somehow, and then just like, you know, doing some sort of like cheerleading move with like the stage security. That those things are always fun. Sometimes I look around, I'm like, what am I gonna climb on tonight? And then I'll like put my foot on it, be like, that's not stable, but that looks more stable. Just stuff like that.
When are you playing next?
You know, I was thinking maybe I could like, you know, come over to your side of the pond this summer and we could do a show, a VERO show. That would be really fun.
I live in LA. I'm in your pond.
I know, but I'm over here, and yes,
We're
you
over here. Come over. Yes.
My last
Come over.
My last LA show was in August, actually, at the Terragram, which I love that venue so much. It was great. So
I would love to put Lauren and Steve in a room and see what they come up with, because she's wild and you love a diva.
Oh yeah.
I wouldn't call me a diva. I'd call myself a rock star.
Rock star. I love a rock star.
Yeah.
Same thing to my mind.
Larry, you are the only diva on this screen right now.
Correct.
No, seriously, I've been the whole time as I've been loving this like volley between the two of you. I keep thinking, yeah, I got to make that meeting happen. That meeting has got to happen.
Let's do it,
because the magic is there. The magic is there. Well, I want to thank you all for visiting with us, because I'll tell you what, there's nothing like the experience of a show. You know, I was talking at the beginning of this gathering about sitting in CBGBs and watching Patti Smith, and it changed my life. But I got to tell you, to be in a theater or an arena with an artist, some of whom my friend Steve has worked with, and watch them create an alternate universe of magic. I'll always remember how, Steve, how you brought Kylie to New York, and that one show where everything just exploded in circles and colors. It's equally life-changing because it makes you believe in magic.
Yep.
And that's what it's all about. So I want to thank Steve Anderson.
Just have to, because I just caught it in the corner of my eye in terms of the crazy show thing. And I promise this is just because I saw it. Look at this. So this is, I put a GoPro on the trumpet when we were playing Coachella.
That's awesome.
For Pete Winfield, Steve Anderson, Lauren Ruth Ward, and myself, thank you for joining us. And remember, the conversation continues on VERO. This is what we do all day, every day, top to bottom. You're going to find great artists. You're going to find deep, deep fans of music. It's passionate, it's positive, and it's smart. So join us on VERO, and I'll see you next time. This is Let's Talk Music.
Thank you, Larry.
Thanks, Larry.
You know what I'm talking about. That's what I'm talking about.